All right, and we're live. All right, guys, you're joining us now. We are with Matt Whitman. Does the 10-minute Bible Hour on YouTube and also a podcast called No Dumb Questions. I have not checked out your podcast. I'm not a big podcast person, but
This is a disaster.
Is it a disaster?
What will we have to talk about?
Whoa. I have plenty of dumb questions. So, yeah, but I'm a big fan of the 10-minute Bible Hour. And,
Thank you.
And I've been watching it, and I subscribed. I've seen it once a couple of years ago when I was at Bible college. And then I lost track. I didn't see it again after that. And you started following me on Twitter. And so I rediscovered it. I watched, I think, every episode of the 10-minute Bible Hour ones. I've seen every episode of those since then. I have not watched the latest one, though. My plan was to watch that during lunch and then have this call. But for those of you who are watching, we had to move. We had to change the time of the call. So
because I forgot my mom's birthday lunch because I'm a jerk. I'm a terrible, terrible son.
Oh, I thought it was your mother-in-law. Your mom. That's
no. This is my straight up mom from whom I came. I need to be a better son.
Yeah, so don't spoil the new 10-minute Bible Hour for me, because I'm excited to see it once I finally break and eat lunch.
Sounds good. It's about a kid falling out a window and dying. So it's
come on.
Super up.
Wait, is that Eutychus?
Yeah, that's
Eutychus.
That's the kid.
Okay. So yeah, that's my background. I've been to 2 different Bible colleges. I just graduated from Crossroads Bible College in Indiana. I did it online, so I don't know where it was.
That explains what you were wondering. I remember exactly what state my college was in just because of how much I was there.
But yeah, I also went to Word of Life in upstate New York. I don't know if you've ever heard of either of those.
I haven't, but that doesn't mean they're not awesome.
No. I'm not biased, but I think that they're awesome.
That happen east of the Mississippi, I'm not as sharp on. I ventured as far as Chicago for school, but otherwise I'm pretty decidedly west.
Yeah, and that's probably the same for me. I haven't been west of the Mississippi since I was like very little.
Okay, all right. Because let's do this thing then. Quiz. Yeah. I live in one of the 2 rectangle states. I am in Wyoming. Okay. Is that the north rectangle or the south rectangle?
Oh, well, you're the north rectangle.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe how many people can't keep those 2 straight.
Well, I did that process of elimination because I know the other one's Colorado. And
okay, all right.
Never mind.
Oh, well handled. Yeah.
Now I'm feeling really smart. All right. Oh, thank you. So for those of you who have not seen the 10-minute Bible Hour, you guys can check out my Facebook page. I've posted, I think, 2 different episodes of the 10-minute Bible Hour that you can check out. Just funny stuff. I admire how you take the Bible and you make it very accessible for people. My understanding is your audience is people that don't have a religious background, right? That seems to be what it is.
I'm definitely trying to make it work for that crowd.
Right.
My hope is that for people like me who were raised around it, and I don't even know when I started going to church. I suppose the week after I was born. I'm a pastor's kid, and so eventually, I think there are a lot of people like me where you feel like you've already heard it all a billion times, but you really haven't, and so it starts to just wash over you when you encounter stuff from the Bible. And so I'm trying to make it something that I would want to watch and listen to, that gets into a little bit more and just kind of wrestles with it and thinks it through and does so sounding like a normal person who would laugh about normal things and talk about it in a normal, not fancy way.
We're not trying to be Ned Flanders here.
No, I mean, well, I wish I had the integrity of Ned Flanders, but otherwise, no.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing. You reference stuff that like a lot of non-Christians would think, oh, I didn't think Christians were allowed to watch that. Like, like The Simpsons and The Simpsons. I've been a fan of Family Guy. Am I allowed to say this? I've been a fan of Family Guy for a long time. I'd never watched full episodes. I always watch clips on YouTube. And now recently it's The Simpsons. And I'm like people say that it died out a long time ago. I think it's still pretty funny. I don't know.
I think it's delightful, man. I started watching that. I recorded that on VHS cassettes when I was a little kid, and my parents discovered it was a little bit more grown up than the other kids' cartoons. So I maybe had to be a bit sneakier about it for a while. But,
yeah. Yeah. So you grew up, you're a pastor's kid, and where did you go to college? Did you do like a ministry college or?
No, I just went to a liberal arts college. I went to Trinity College in Chicago. Well, it's in Deerfield, Illinois, just north of Chicago.
And what did you study there?
History, philosophy, and baseball.
Really, baseball? Is that like part of your degree or?
No. I just play ball there.
You play ball? Okay, cool.
Yeah, have fun with it. Yeah, and then I did some language stuff after that, and then I did my first round of grad school was at a seminary, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, and I guess church history and theology is what I did there.
Okay.
And then my post-grad was in history of thought at Nebraska Kearney.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's my rundown.
So, but you do have some seminary. You do have seminary training.
Yeah, I have a seminary degree.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna say, and you can definitely tell your history background when you watch the 10-minute Bible hour. You get in there and you explain, how people thought in that point in time, and that's something that I'd always prided myself in knowing. But you still bring out stuff that I had never even heard of. Every once in a while, it's like, wow, I didn't realize that was how they thought back then. So there you go. Give yourself a pat on the back.
Useful, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Give yourself a pat on the back.
I like the history side of it, and for me, when I first started getting into that side of things, it helped me appreciate that. Oh, hey, this thing checks out and it seems legitimate, because whenever they go and dig stuff up, it's where it should have been. The names, the historical details, they line up really well, which makes sense, because if the Bible was written as close in time as it purports to be to the events that it describes, and all of the descriptions were inaccurate, and the names of people who lived in places and did things were all wrong, and where the towns were was all wrong, everybody would have immediately dismissed it as fiction, and it wouldn't have made it out of generation one of its writing. So it makes sense that the thing lines up. But what I really like about the history side of studying the Bible is it puts a context to the characters. Yes. And so they make more sense. What they do make sense. Their motivations make sense. They're more relatable, I guess.
Yeah, and the last episode that I watched, so this would have been 2 weeks ago, you were talking about Diana, and who was it? Apollos was the week before.
Well, I talked about them both off and on over the last few weeks because we've been on episodes.
And you were talking about, I'd never realized this is Paul taking out both of the heavy hitters, one after the other, and it's this huge symbolic thing for the ancient people, the ancient pagans of that time. I thought that was really that was really cool. Like I said, not much gets by me when it comes to history. There's not much that I don't know.
Well, a lot gets by me, so I need to watch you more. That sounds good.
Well, clearly not, because you're teaching me stuff. I've been thinking about how when I read the Bible, there's so much that I know because of 2 years of Bible college. I was homeschooled through middle school and high school. And even before that, I had a pretty strong religious background. So my religious background is on my my blog. I was raised Catholic until I was 12, and then we switched to an evangelical church. And that was also around the time that I started being homeschooled. And I've just always, been interested in the things of God. And I had I talk about how I had some skepticism and things like that about the Bible and whether or not God existed. And the past 5-6 years, God's really been helping me through that stuff, and brought a mentor into my life who taught me about apologetics. He also got me interested in politics, which we will get to very soon.
Okay, sounds good.
And yeah, that's it. Sort of had a second awakening in my life, kind of bringing me back to God, and that's when I went to Bible college. I forget why I was where I was going with that story, except for
Because it's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
There was somewhere where I was going before that, and now that we're there. So politics. So this guy, we've talked about this. You are a libertarian, correct?
I am.
You're right. And I tend to use the what happened there? Okay, I tend to use the moniker of conservative. And I would use the moniker of liberal or libertarian kind of interchangeably as well. That's more of a recent development. But
whoa, are you calling me a liberal?
In a sense,
whoa,
what? But in a sense, we are. When you look at Thomas Jefferson and
yes.
Let me see, who are some of John Locke and Blackwell and all these other people. I haven't had a chance to be able to read their direct writings, but we are children of their thought. You and I both are, and I'm still working out a lot of different issues. Like I'm working out issues like drugs, prostitution, same-sex marriage, things like that. What am I as a Christian and as a conservative supposed to think about these issues? But like I said, I grew up Catholic. I grew up in a very legalistic background, and I'm moving away from that, and I'm learning more about liberty and what does liberty actually mean. And one of my favorite things to say is that liberty is the freedom to do good. It's not anarchy, as the founding fathers said that it's anarchy is the freedom. Anarchy is just doing whatever you want. Liberty is the freedom to do good. And then there's tyranny on the other hand. There's you have anarchy, liberty, and tyranny. And you and I would definitely be in the camp of liberty. We might be different on different issues. I don't know. And like I said, I'm still seeking out what do I actually think about issues like drugs, like same-sex marriage, and things like that. But I just keep finding more liberty. More liberty is what we need. It's more cowbell. There you go. So explain a little bit about your political background, your political philosophy. I mean, the floor is yours for as long as you'd like.
Oh, I won't love it too much. We can bounce it back and forth. And I apologize in advance. I'm working this cough. So I'm gonna.
Me too. It's so bad. It's like.
I'll tell you what, man.
All winter.
It's a like month-long lingering after cough. So I promise this thing in my cheek. It's not necessarily chewing tobacco, but it might be.
Good.
So the term libertarian throws a lot of people off, and the term liberal throws a lot of people off, and the term conservative throws a lot of people off because they all kind of depend on when you're asking someone what they are.
Right.
If you're talking about a conservative and it's 1986, that's very different than what conservative means now. A conservative in 1986 never would have dreamt of even entertaining the healthcare proposal that Paul Ryan just put forward. Yeah. That would be something for radical socialists. Yeah. So my point is the thing moves, and Ryan's healthcare bill isn't that different from Hillary Clinton as first lady's healthcare ideas in what was it, 96, roughly somewhere in there. The conservatives would just absolutely not touch. So the idea of how much government is a good idea and how much individual freedom is a good idea, this has migrated a little bit. When we talk about liberalism in the context you were talking about it, we're talking about classical liberalism, Jeffersonian founding father, Lockean constitutionalists who would say that the biggest role of government is not keep people safe, which is what you hear all the time now. It takes a very big government to prevent all risk in your life. They would have said that the point of government is to ensure certain inalienable rights as life, liberty, property. I mean, they phrase it as happiness. And they would say, in these pursuits, all men are created equal. Well, there's one giant fly in the ointment of American classical liberalism, and that is that in those three pursuits, everyone is created equal except for women and blacks. Well, that didn't work very well. And so we had this partial idea for what real liberty would look like, but only partial, and weird compromises had to be made. So when I say, I'm a libertarian, I like that term better than conservative though I think libertarians now are what conservatives were in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. I also think that classical liberal doesn't quite work because people might think of the founding fathers, and they did sketch out founding documents that allowed for slavery and women not to vote or participate in society, which admittedly at that point in history would have been wildly progressive to do. Mm-hmm. So I don't want people to just lump me there. So I go with the term libertarian, and a lot of times when I'm talking about politics and theology, I'll just use the term political grace. Mm-hmm. That it's more of a philosophy, a theology of how to deal with the fact that I live in a diverse society with people who don't agree with me, mm-hmm. than it is a system of legal plans and ideals that I have that I want to put out. So my basic thing is this. I really like live and let live. Yeah. Christians do not occupy nearly a significant enough majority of population to be dictating anything to anyone. But further, even when we have occupied that great of a majority, we've just been crappy when we're in charge. Mm-hmm. We've been willing to be violent even at times, which, yuck. If your idea is so bad that you need to kill people to make it work, your idea probably should just go away. Yeah. And so the thing with me is I feel like if we go with a society where people can pretty much do whatever they want, make deals with whoever they want, sell and buy whatever they want, use their money however they want, go where they want, think what they want, say what they want. As long as there's no tangible victim involved, I think people should be able to do whatever they want, no matter how silly I think it is or how bad I think it might be for them. Mm-hmm. Because I think in such a society, the truest things will rise to the top and the worst ideas will go away. And I think the truest thing is the gospel. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's really hard to have the conversation about Jesus in any kind of, mixed setting, because Jesus comes along now with so many political assumptions about things that our tribe is going to make your tribe do if we ever get in charge. Yeah. Well, who wants to sign up for that version of Jesus? Mm. Oh, so like if he gets enough votes, then he gets to use guns to make everybody behave the way people think he would want them to behave? Ick. So that's part of why I think people are not as eager to respond to the message of Christ anymore, because I think the message is clouded with a whole bunch of weird, controlling, forceful elements that aren't part of the gospel. So for me, my game plan would be Christians should lead the way in backing way off on a ton of stuff and advocating through persuasion and never force for things that we believe to be better ways to live, better ways to treat each other, etc. Right.
I might have to disagree with you on one thing about the force. I think that the force, dun, dun, dun. Okay, now that's stuck in my head. When it comes to using force, and I when I listen to libertarians and anarchists, their rule is always never using force. I think that they're
not me.
That isn't your rule.
No, go ahead and round that out. But I'll speak to that.
I was going to say there's at least one exception, and that's when force is being used on you or on someone else. Right. Okay.
No, you're misunderstanding the libertarian position. Like I don't mean to sound critical, but this is a common.
And I understand that all libertarians don't think that, but it just seems
most libertarians would say that there's this thing called the non-aggression principle.
Right.
What this says is if no one's aggressing against someone else, you just leave them alone.
Yeah.
But if someone is aggressing against someone else, meaning like, hey, I'm going to take all your stuff, or I'm going to raid your house, or I'm going to beat you up, that at that point, it becomes the duty of everybody in society to say, wait a second, we're going to do what it takes to stop you. You can't do that. So for example, I am one of very few pastors you will talk to who thinks prostitution should be completely free and legal. Mm-hmm. I think prostitution is a terrible idea, and I hope no one participates in it. But I'm not willing to do what it takes to stop two people from saying, I'd like to make a contract with you for you to do something and me to do something and for us to exchange money.
Right.
I don't want to use guns on that. But if it's involuntary prostitution, where we're talking about sex trafficking, and one party doesn't want to be involved in this at all, and they're being forced against their will to do something awful and shameful and degrading to them, well, then yeah, I would advocate for society using all kinds of measures of force to stop that.
Kill them
because
all.
There's an aggression. Well, I generally don't like killing, but
okay.
So to me, that would be the difference. If somebody wants to do meth, I think that would be a terrible idea, and I'm against it. But I think someone should be allowed to put whatever they want to put into their own body, because I don't think the government owns other people's bodies.
Right.
However, if you want to forcefully put something into someone else's body, I'm going to stick up for the person you're using force against. So that for me is the breakdown. But that is in society. Now, as an individual in church, this is a very different thing. Church is voluntary. We get together. We do church together with like-minded people because we want to be there, and we agree enough that we can get along and try to be fruitful together,
Right.
But I think the big point of confusion is that Christianity for 2,000 years has wrestled with this. What is state? What is church? Should they be governed the same way? Should one ultimately conquer and rule over the other? And so I think we've set the needle to the wrong place at many times, and it gets very weird when the church is in a position to use force to make things they want to have happen. We don't need to.
Yeah. And you can see that all throughout, history. Let me see. I'm just looking to see if anyone's responded to it's, in the middle of the day, probably people aren't going to be responding to the video as much as I'd hoped, but hopefully they'll watch it in post. I'm going to put this through all different kinds of lines. Sure. But yeah, this is really cool. And yeah, I would definitely agree with you on those things. Let me see. What else? There was something you had said, and I wanted to respond to that. So how much time do you have left?
We've got another 10, 15 minutes, something like that.
Okay, cool. And I like how you bring the politics of grace, and you talk about that in the 10-minute Bible hour, using force. So I had a friend of mine from Bible college who is more liberal, more progressive. She voted for Bernie Sanders and then for Hillary Clinton. I keep trying to have her on the show, but she keeps canceling. I'm not sure if she's just, putting me off or if she actually wants to do this. But we were talking about public schools, and she was like, oh, you need to force kids to go to school. And it reminded me of that line, if you need to force people to partake in your ideas, you have some really bad ideas. I wish I had thought of that when she said it. I wish I hadn't said it.
Well, the philosophy there, where you and I would be different than your friend is, okay, we both obviously want good. So that's cool. I when I was young, I used to just assume that the other side was like evil and blood dripped from their fangs, and they just wanted to destroy the world and, be Nazis. And okay,
they don't? What?
Well, there are a few probably who do, but for the most part, this is what I see. People want good, and one of the things that disappoints me is that I feel like as a libertarian, people don't give me the benefit of that doubt sometimes. Yeah. Like, what? You don't want to take people's money by force and use it to make these other things happen in a mandatory way?
Yeah.
You must hate education and children and the environment. What? No. I love all of those things. It's just that I feel like we can accomplish the same or more good through voluntarism without having to force anybody. And then you get better results from people than trying to accomplish those things by saying, well, never mind. We tried the conversation part. You all didn't sign up well enough. We're just going to use force and that'll work. But we both want good. And so in your friend's vision of things, I would guess she would say, this is good for society. It's for the greater good.
Yeah.
And my position would be that the greatest good is, hang on just a second. There you go. Is that a little noise going on?
Okay.
Would be that the greatest good is what happens when we partner together voluntarily.
Right.
What it means, if we do that, is I think we can still have schools. I think we can still have roads.
I think we can have even better schools and better roads if we did. Yes.
Because we all know we do stuff better when our money matters, when it's our own money. But when you're spending someone else's money, we tend to be pretty flippant with it. But when we're engaged because our money and our time is going into something, good things happen. We donated over $400 billion this year as a country.
Yeah.
And that's while being taxed at an effective rate of what, 20-some%.
More than 30. It's like
most people,
I've been doing a lot of research on this. How much of our GDP goes to? It's crazy.
And we're still ridiculously generous, even after being taxed at an insane rate, in my opinion. So to me, it just comes down to this. To your friend, I also want good. I think there's another way to do it. I'm not prepared to make the move to say I have a vision for the greater good that requires everyone's full participation. So I'm going to need you to get on board. And then to have them say, no, we'd rather not be a part of your charity and your vision. I'm not content to say, okay, well, then I'm going to have to use guns and force to make you.
Yeah.
My disappointment with people who see this differently than me is that I feel like they're not willing to do the agree to disagree thing.
Yeah.
They go right to the force. And my disappointment with where we've been as Christians is that I think we're guilty of the same thing. We have a vision for the world sometimes. We're like, we just need the gays not to get married. And if they just don't get married, then society will be great and church will work out. And so then we jump to a place of saying, well, we're going to single out that contract and use force to say that contract's not okay. But we want our contracts protected. We should be allowed to make deals with people. And my take would be, what if we just ratcheted it down, took force off the table, and said, while reserving the right to totally disagree with some of your decisions, I'm also rooting for you to succeed. And I wouldn't want you to use force to stop me from hanging out with who I want to hang out with and making deals with who I want to make deals with. So I wouldn't think of doing it to you. Now let's see what we can do together.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Now, so it's funny because the last person I had on the show was also a libertarian, and I was going to have someone on tomorrow who is also a libertarian, but she had to cancel. I don't know what it is. I just keep getting libertarians. The liberals just won't respond to me. They won't answer my calls.
They'll persist. They'll get around to it.
Yeah, I do need to persist. I guess that's my problem is I don't keep at it enough. But taxes. I've been working on this project for more than a year, just trying to figure out what do we do about taxes. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like, are you get rid of them all? And
I don't like them.
Right.
I'm a realist. If I became king tomorrow, I wouldn't just create a libertarian utopia and cancel everybody's stuff, because everybody has already made decisions based on places where we've used force against each other. Where we've used force against each other. Amazing what these cough drops will do to your ability to speak. So, for example, I think that whatever changes we make to Obamacare need to be considerate of the fact that we forced millions of people to buy something they didn't want, that we forced companies to make contracts they didn't want to make.
And they go out of business.
Yes, people had to change their own household budget and their entire business model at the point of a gun. And people might be confused by what I'm saying there. The bottom line is every law is ultimately enforced at the point of a gun. You usually don't see it because it usually doesn't escalate to that point. But every law has an or else it's not a law. It's a friendly suggestion, in which case it's not binding. If you resist long enough, force will be exerted against you to make you participate.
Yeah.
So we used force to say, we got a crazy idea. We want to do a charity that you kind of have to pay for, where we fund people's healthcare, which I love, except for that you have to pay for. If my neighbor comes to me, he's like, hey, we're doing a thing where we're going to, make healthcare more affordable for people. You want to kick in? Heck yeah. Where do I sign? Here, have some money. But it's not cool if my neighbor goes to the next house and they're like, no, it sounds cool, but I don't really want to kick in on your healthcare charity, but I'm rooting for you.
Yeah.
And then he just gets out a gun. He's like, how about now? Now do you want to contribute to my charity? Well, we know that's wrong.
Yeah.
And so what's frustrating is that when it comes to taxation, instead of using it for things like basic national defense, overwhelmingly agreed upon, maybe infrastructure projects where you've got huge consensus, or having funding a system by which we adjudicate differences between parties, protect basic human rights, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Instead, the stakes have changed. Now we're voting on, do I get your stuff? Well, I'll tell you how most people are going to vote on the question of, do I get your stuff? Yes. Democracy is not supposed to be a thing where you can vote on anything. There's some things that just morally should be not votable. So, for example, let's say you, me, and a rich person sit down for lunch. And, I don't have a ton. Maybe you don't have a ton. But rich person has got like 8 properties. And I say, you know what? I have an idea, guys. Let's be democratic about this. What? What are we doing? No. We're going to put this to a vote, and it will be binding, and everyone's going to get a say. Who votes that we all sell all of our properties and divide the proceeds equally? Frank? Oh, looks like it's 2-1. Like, the other person wouldn't sit there and be like, well, now let me make my case for why I think we should vote no. No, the other party would go, you can't vote on that. That's not votable. That shouldn't, of course you're going to vote that way. That's silly. That's not on the table. We can vote on something else, but not that. And that would be the common sense moral position. But somehow when we extrapolate this out to the level of government, we think it immediately becomes moral as soon as we put it to a vote. Mm-hmm. All kinds of stuff in history has been voted upon that wasn't moral or right. Mm-hmm. So I'm cool with participating in taxation, which will make some of my libertarian friends cringe.
Yeah.
But what we're using it on and the kind of stuff that we're taxing and the way we're doing it doesn't work. I'm imagining something 1/25th the size of what we currently do.
Yeah.
And which, again, I couldn't do overnight because you have to keep the promises to all the people who you forced to do business a certain way. So, I mean, to get out of the stuff we're in, you have to taper. You can't just do the radical go in with the machete approach. Mm-hmm. I've answered like 8 different things that you brought up in like 8 different ways. I feel like I'm going too long here.
That's cool. We're probably going to have to cut things off pretty soon. But like I said, that's been a project that I've been working on for a long time, for almost a year now.
What's your read on it?
I've been a big fan of the fair tax. Have you heard of the fair tax?
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I've been working on is a mechanism that, a legal mechanism, I call it, that would make the tax go down over time rather than going up over time, by giving the people who set the tax, Congress or the president or whatever level. Oh, look at that.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, my computer just died, so I have to move to a sunnier place. All right.
Fair enough.
So my whole idea has been, it's a mechanism that gives Congress and or whoever, whatever level of government, gives them incentive to lower the tax rate. I'm fleshing that out, and I want to roll out a blog or something explaining it in detail. I don't want to go into it because I'm still, like I said, I'm still fleshing it out, and I'm insecure about it. But yeah.
No. I like it in principle.
Yeah, it's very interesting just studying this. I'm still learning so much about taxes But
can I throw out a thought on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So to do something like what you're talking about, it's a graduated plan that unfolds over time. Mm-hmm. Washington would have to do something that it isn't doing at all right now and hasn't done forever, and that is work with the other side.
Yeah. So
Obamacare happened in 2009 without any regard for what the other side thought. Nope, we have a slight majority, 51%. So y'all are going to have to suffer. We're doing this. And by the way, we're not even going to read it. So good luck.
Yeah.
Then what do we just try to do with the other side? For 8 years, they called, rightly, they called bullcrap on that. And then they flip around and they try to do the exact same thing. And thankfully, there was a group that said, no, we're not going to do that. Now, I realize people are going to feel different about all of that. But what wasn't present in either the Republican attempt to redo Obamacare or Obamacare was consideration for how this affects your political enemies.
Right.
Nope, tough luck, political enemies. And when I use the phrase political grace, part of what I'm talking about is consideration for people we don't like or agree with.
Yeah.
Consider, how will this affect people who live in ways that drive me crazy? How will this affect people who hate me and say horrible things about me on the internet? We have to think about things like that again, and show great concern for the well-being of our enemies, or else we can't have trust and we can't have unity. what I like about libertarianism is it puts me in a position where I can say, I don't like that. I don't agree with that. I wouldn't be interested in that. That said, I also don't own you. And why would I root against your success? Therefore, you do what you need to do. I'm going to do what I need to do. And I will always stick up for you to have the freedom to make the victimless choices you want to make, whether I like them or not. And I hope they'll return the favor. But what you're talking about is something that would immediately get overturned after a midterm election, after a 4-year cycle, or at worst, after 8 years, as we canoe overcorrecting back and forth down the stream of American history right now. So what you'd have to do to make that work is get buy-in from everybody.
Yeah.
And right now, our visions for the world are so different because, like we just talked about, one side says, I can only realize how things ought to be by making everyone comply. And, well, the other side also says that. But then you've got, what we're talking about, which is hey, what about making things good without forcing everyone to comply point of view? We have to sell people on that idea if we want things to get better, because ultimately this will end in blood and force. One of these two teams is going to get to 55 or 60% and think they don't have to listen to or consider the other team at all anymore. And then the dam's going to break, and we will break as a society. So what I'm proposing is an off-ramp that legislation like what you're talking about would be a great fit with. And the off-ramp is just reimagine how we think about people we disagree with.
Yeah.
Reimagine what degree of force we're willing to use to realize our perfect utopia, and maybe ratchet down those expectations a tick.
Yeah.
Then something like what you're throwing out has a chance to actually stand and play out over, say, 15, 20 years and actually work.
Yeah, and we definitely, we got to build those bridges. It's so important in the political climate that we have. Well, on that note, I was trying to get that wrapped up really quick so I could, and then the computer died. But thank you very much for being on the show. And
that was fun.
Yes, this is lots of fun. I was just like, hey, give it a shot. Ask him if he wants to be on the show, and I didn't actually think that this would work out as well as it did. I'll probably
I appreciate the vote of confidence there.
I'll probably look back on this years later and be like, oh, this is really terrible quality and everything, but
whatever. We are where we are and we're having fun.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna go eat lunch and I'm gonna watch your next episode. I'm gonna think, hey, I just talked to that guy and that was really cool. All right, thank you.
Appreciate it, Frank.
Thank you for being here. I'd love to have you back, like I said. And
hit me up.
You have fun at your mother's lunch.
Yes.
And tell her I said happy birthday. Some stranger said happy birthday.
No, it'll count. She'll appreciate it.
All right.
You take care, man.
All right. Bye.